Hey, friends, welcome to the special edition of the Tennis and Bagels podcast. Joining me today, we have a special guest, tennis writer, writes for tennis.com. We've had him many times before on the podcast. It's such a pleasure to recap the end of all the majors with him. He's written the Pete Sampras Greatness Revisited, which is his latest book. You should check that out on Amazon, and you can follow all of his work on tennis.com. Please welcome Steve Flink. Steve, how are you? How are you doing today? Quite a month of tennis we've had, and really excited to do this recap with you.
Yeah, glad to be back with you again, Vansh. It was great fortnight over there. I mean, remarkable how things shifted from the Djokovic saga, which was so sad for everybody, Novak included, to having such a compelling tournament and such an improbable ending. So I think we really a lot changed across 2 weeks.
For sure, yeah. Especially the way it started, it was good. It was nice to see sort of the tennis takeover at the end. And if we just stick to what's fresh in our mind, which is obviously the men's final, to me it was one of the most unbelievable, unexpected. You used the word improbable run ever to a major title. I mean, here Nadal is 35 and a half years old. He had foot surgery in September. He had problems. He's had problems on the foot ever since the first lockdown. And of course, on top of that, he got COVID at the end of December. And, what a way to finish off this tournament for him. First ever 2-sets-to-love comeback since 2007 Wimbledon. And, it just feels so deserved, because in a way it's kind of like destiny that for Rafa to win it in the fashion that he did, especially after all the disappointment he sort of had here since 2009.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think that's an excellent assessment. I thought a lot about that. So many things had to fall into place, and that's why your characterization of destiny really makes sense, because you think about it, Vansh, all the things that you mentioned with the foot and the surgery and COVID and not even sure about a month before whether he's even to come play this tournament, then surely not really believing when he got over there. He just was hoping that he could get his teeth into the tournament and be back competing again. And I don't think it would have been shattered had he gone to the quarters and lost there. It would have been that kind of a tournament. He could have accepted it and moved on. But look what happened. I mean, first of all, the Djokovic being deported. So Djokovic was on his half of the draw. He's gone. That created a void on that half of the draw. Secondly, I was sure that he would meet Zverev in the quarters, given the way Zverev had played all through post-Wimbledon to the end of last year, winning the Olympics, winning the year-end championships, very good U.S. Open, losing in 5 to Djokovic. Just a stellar record for Zverev and very reliable. I kind of thought he was going to win the tournament, frankly, going in. And then then you throw on top of that Rafa's escape against Shapovalov on a day when he had heat stroke and when his stomach was really ailing. Out of nowhere, that stomach really got him, and the heat got him, which never happens, but in this particular day it did. And somehow he managed to dance out of it in the fifth set on experience and guile and just good match playing know-how. So you had all of those variables, and then he ends up playing a solid match against Berrettini in the semis, and then the spectacular comeback in the final. That's why I say improbably. It's a script that would be very hard to write going into the tournament.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, he's up against the 2021 US Open champion, the best player on hard courts, very, very, very near to Djokovic in that regard. And, I really thought the first set, the way it sort of turned out, I mean, Rafa really looked like he was in a bundle of sweat. I mean, the first 4 games in, and he just looked like a 35-year-old. He just looked slow. And Medvedev, obviously he held for 2-1, but then Medvedev was really cruising through his own service games, and it looked bleak there for Nadal for a while. I mean, I really thought after that second set, I was like, oh no, this could be, flashback to sort of the 2019 final beatdown that, he had against Djokovic in the final there. And
let's go back. Well described, Vansh. Let's go back though to the first set. You described it. To get to 2-1, he had a deuce game on his serve, and then he had to save a couple of break points in the third game. It was not exactly a morale booster. He was just sort of hanging on. Then over those last 5 games, he won 5 points. Right. He was obliterated in that first set. And you say he looked 35. I'd say, frankly, not to be unkind, because I'm a big Rafa admirer that he looked even older than that. And he also looked tight. He looked nervous, confused, and like, how am I gonna impose myself in this match? And I agree with you. At that stage, and Medvedev is doing the fist pump at the end of the set, and you're saying, wow, this could be over in a hurry. And yes, it did call to mind the Novak. Of course, there's a big difference between Novak and his experience and an all-time great. It was in the habit of winning majors and who has haunted Rafa so many times on the hard courts over the course of their careers, and Medvedev. But nonetheless, it's a big cushion to give someone as good as Medvedev to lose a 6-2 first set and know you got to win 3 of the next 4. And you know that Medvedev is the kind of guy that usually is pretty durable. So it was going to be a hard road ahead. But we saw the signs, Vanch, early in the second. That's what maybe surprised me as much as anything, was that, yes, Medvedev eventually won the set. It was a breakdown, got the break back, then broke back again when Rafa served for the set at 5-3 and had that set point. And great effort from Medvedev, and finally culminates with a recovery from 3-5 down in the tiebreak. I thought he played those 4 points really spectacularly to pull out the set. And then he kind of raised his arms to the crowd as if to say to them, you may not want me to win, but I'm here and you're not going to stop me. And at that stage, you had to believe, even though Rafa had played so much better in the second, looked like a different player in many respects, that you would have thought, Vansh, that was harder to take than losing the set 6-3 and trying to start regrouping in the third. Put so much effort into it, 84 minutes. It was so hard fought. And in the end, he had nothing to show for it. Medvedev had fended him off, had played the big points better, and there he was with a 2-0 lead. And you just alluded to it in our opening, Vansh. Last time was usually at the 2007 Wimbledon. Rafa had never done this in a major final. And it's kind of surprising in a way, given the great fighter that he is, but he never had. And to do it at 35, and at 35 with poor preparation. Yes, he won the ATP 250 event right there in Melbourne. I understand that. That helped to get 3 matches in. However, that was not a lot after all the absence. If you look back, and he didn't play after the French, came back, he didn't play Wimbledon after the French, played 1 match in the summer, lost to Lloyd Harris, then he's gone. I mean, so much time. So to just have this one little warm-up tournament to prepare you for a major, and knowing he would be the first to admit, I think, he wasn't in peak physical condition. So it was, to me, it was maybe beyond improbable that he could recover from that kind of a deficit against someone like Medvedev that's going to work you so hard and keep you out there so long. And we saw that eventually it did go to 5 hours and 24 minutes. Now, how does a guy that, I mean, it's one thing 10 years ago to lose to Novak in a 5-hour, 53-minute epic on the same court, but here it is, 25 versus 35. How he could come up with the goods over those last 3 sets still astonishes me.
Yeah, I mean, that's one part of this match that just I'm having a hard time explaining, because obviously, I mean, just going back to those first 2 sets, I really felt like Medvedev was sort of playing the way the perfect kind of a game plan. I mean, in the sense, he really came out trying to physically outlast Nadal in a way that someone like him is really kind of prepared to take on. And he was massaging the ball around the corner. He was getting into these lung-busting exchanges. He was covering the court really well. Obviously, he was using that cross-court backhand hard to the Nadal forehand, opening up the backhand down the line, which he later went away with, and he started hitting a bunch of drop shots, as the match sort of progressed.
I don't mean to interrupt you. Just let me do so briefly. That was catastrophic to Medvedev. He is usually one of the clearest thinkers out there. One of the things everybody was saying about him after he lost to Rafa in the 2019 U.S. Open final, when he came from 2 sets down and nearly made the comeback himself before losing in 5, was that here was one of the most guileful, cagey match players around. The flexibility, the different game plans that he threw at Nadal, the shifts in strategy and tactics. And here, I think maybe because he was so he was mentally fatigued, and he was very beleaguered almost. He was upset by the crowd. He didn't like the fact that they were so pro-Rafa and they seemed to be against him, and that was weighing on his mind. And perhaps that explains some of the, shall we say, questionable thinking on his part. And you just alluded to me, was one of the most important factors in the match, the overdone drop shot. Too many of them, too obvious at times. And Rafa's movement got better as the match went on. He was reading those beautifully and getting onto them swiftly, getting up there swiftly and passing Medvedev and just not letting him get away with any even mediocre to pretty good drop shots were not going to be good enough. I didn't understand it because you said it well. I mean, when he was stepping in and nailing the cross court and then hit some beautiful down the lines off that side, that's where he was doing damage to Rafa. And let me just add one more point, Vansh. And I've been thinking about this for days, and I was trying to figure out why did Medvedev, the guy who serves that well, and it's no disrespect to Rafa, who's a great returner, but I felt like this holding became a bigger and bigger issue for Daniel after the first set. And the only thing I can put my finger on is that he did not use the wide serve in the deuce court enough. He loves going down the tee. That's his favorite. I get it. And he kills a lot of right-handers with that serve. That's not the right serve against Rafa. Yes, if it's perfectly located down the tee, maybe he'll get the ace. But Rafa otherwise is going to get his racket on that ball, and he's going to hit a deep down the middle return, and Daniel had to work the point. I'm not quite sure why he didn't use the wide one more, because at the very least he would have been in really good control of the point, and a lot of the good wide serves would have been good enough in their own right to win the points. Do you agree with that?
I do. I got that feeling that he started moving. He really started moving away from those wide serves, and that's what you have to do against a guy like Rafa, who stands so far back behind the baseline with his deep return position, because he has such an awesome ability to like loop those returns back, and then he can get on the baseline and he can start dictating with his forehand, and that changes the momentum of the match. No, I agree.
And I would have thought that was would have been a crucial part of Daniel's game plan. You've seen it through the years. Roger always used that wide serve against Rafa in the deuce court. Novak uses it beautifully against Rafa. It's not that you can overdo that either. You've still got to move it around some, but he didn't use it nearly enough. And I bet you Rafa was pleasantly surprised by that.
Yeah, and the other thing that kind of surprised me, I mean, I know it's sort of different conditions, and he's obviously not the most comfortable at doing it, but he does not like to come to the net on his own terms. I mean, unless it's on his own terms, like he just looks so uncomfortable up there. I mean, when he has to get up there and Rafa's using the slice, or he's coming in and he's trying to finish at the net, I feel like he's just so awkward and uncomfortable, and he just doesn't trust it. He'd much rather retreat back to the baseline and restart the point all over again. And then sometimes he sort of gets trapped in no man's land, and then it's trouble for him. And
he doesn't transition nearly as well as Rafa, nor is his technique on the volley even close to as good as Rafa's. You're absolutely right. He's an awkwardness. Now, sometimes he gets away with it because he does basically say to the guy, if you can hit a perfect topspin lob, fine, it's your point. But I'm crowding the net and I dare you to get the ball by me. And sometimes when you're that tight on the net, you don't have to be that great a volleyer. You can still put it away. And I think he relies on that too much, Vansh. And then at other times, with someone as clever as Rafa and who passes so well and can dip the ball at your feet, then that's where he gets exposed. And he was exposed. And there are other times too where he doesn't knife the backhand volley cross court well enough, and Rafa made him pay for that too a couple of times. And so Daniel, they have to revisit that. They've got to really examine that and work on that part of his game. I mean, you look at how Djokovic over the years, how much his volley improved. The young Novak to the Novak we've seen over the last 10 years, big difference. And Daniel's going to have to do the same thing.
Totally agree.
Because Rafa fully exploited that, just exploited it to the hilt.
Completely. And even on some of the poor drop shots, I feel like he can sometimes get away with it if he follows that into the net and then is prepared to sort of lob to the next shot or, finish off the point in that way. But yeah, I totally agree. That's definitely one part of his game that needs improvement.
And again, sorry to interrupt, Vansh. Again, that calls to mind Novak.
Right.
Because will often follow his drop shots into the net. And granted, he's a little quicker. Obviously he's got more agility up around the net, but still it's a good play. And then you're taking away some of the other guys' options.
Absolutely.
And you're right. Medvedev, there were some clear, there were some clear faults in his thinking. There were clear problems in the way that he approached this match tactically. And Rafa, just the opposite.
Right.
Just the opposite. Rarely make the wrong tactical move.
Totally agree. And the thing is, you can't give a player like Nadal even a small window of hope, and he'll take that and he'll raise his level, and that's what happened at 2-3 love 40. Obviously, that was the turning point of this match, and on all these 3 break points, Medvedev made all of his 3 returns, and he did get obviously there's that drop shot that he hit at 2-3 30-40, and you could say he got a little bit tight, he got a bit passive on those occasions, but this is really when the match really started to shift, and then you started to notice that physical difference already late in the 3rd set.
You did. You could see it. I couldn't agree more. I felt that even there was a slight weariness even seeping in toward the end of the 2nd set, but Medvedev made that big push to get that set in his column, and hoping that that was going to destroy Rafa's morale, which it clearly did not. And then you're right. It got more apparent in the latter stages of the 3rd. And even though he put aside that disappointment, Vansh, when he didn't break, and yeah, you're right, he got all his returns back into play. He didn't play any of these points terribly. Rafa did surprise him with the drop shot on the love 40 point, and then before you knew, that game was gone. I give Medvedev credit because so often we see somebody, sort of plagued. They're still thinking about the missed opportunities. They lose their serve in the next game. He didn't do that. He did hold on for 4-3, but then those last 3 games of that 3rd set were disappeared rather swiftly. And Rafa made a nice pass to break him for go up 5-4. And yeah, there was a different complexion to the match. And you knew, Medvedev, I think, was worried by the start of the 4th because he could see this sort of revitalization in Rafa. And that's why I think he made that comment after the match about Rafa, kidding Rafa about, do you ever get tired?
Right.
Because Medvedev knew that he himself was getting a bit tired. And yet he could see in Rafa there was this spark and this sparkle. And that worried him. That worried him. He knew it was like a boxer that should have knocked the guy out in the 7th or 8th round when he had the chance, because once Nadal withstood once he got his teeth into the match and grabbed that 3rd set, you had a whole different feeling about the match. At least I did.
Yeah, completely. Especially even in the 4th set, he had chances to break back. There was that long, 6. It took Nadal his 7th break chance to grab the break at 2-all, and then there was that 4-3. The point that always sticks out to me is that 4-3 30-40 point, where again he went for the drop shot, and it was just he had so much time on that ball, and he just. I didn't think that was the right shot to go for there. And then
no, not at all. And he'd already had 15-4. That was a big game. He needed to break back there because I think he really needed, not that he wasn't going to have a chance in the 5th, but boy, he had to somehow try to hang on and scrape that 4th set out. And you're right. That was, again, bad shot selection and not intelligent thinking on his part. And by that stage, Rafa really knew he could read the plot. He knew exactly what was coming. Yeah. And that was a very big game. And then Rafa suddenly we're 2 sets all. But now, of course, why don't we talk about the 5th, which was really spectacular.
Absolutely, yeah. And in the 5th set, one thing that definitely changed for me is, of course, this was some of the best tennis. Nadal was playing until 5-4 30 love, but I really feel like, even at 3-2, there was those 3 unreturned serves by Medvedev, and each time Nadal went wide on the back, wide with the ad serve on the ad side. And, and I noticed that I was looking at the stats, and in the first 4 sets, Medvedev was making 80% of those returns. And suddenly that number dropped to around 60% in the 5th set. And, I just feel like at least one of those returns should have come back in play in that 3-2 game.
Couldn't agree more. I think he was I don't know whether it was weariness or, he wasn't reading it as well, but I don't think it was that surprising. Rafa was going wide to his backhand a lot. I don't think there was anything about Nadal's patterns, and maybe he was a bit more accurate with it. And he was serving a good speed. You're right. Some more of those returns with Medvedev's wonderful reach at 6-6. There's no doubt more of those should have come back, and he had to work them harder there. But then let's go to the latter stages. Suddenly, he got sort of a gift because Rafa surged his way to 5-4 30 love. You don't think he's going to lose serve from 30 love. And then, a little surprising, he missed that looped running cross-court forehand. not a difficult. It's a shot that he should keep in play. That he wasn't trying to hit hard. He was just trying to get it back fairly deep, and he hit it long. Then the double fault. Then Medvedev played one good point at 30 all, and then Rafa misses a pretty routine cross-court backhand. It was not a good game from him. And what I loved about his comments afterwards was the admission, Vansh, the admission from Rafa that his mind was flashing to 2012 and 2017 because here are two matches that it's remarkable that he wasn't able to win one of the two at least. But in 2012 against Novak, 4-2, 30-15 in the fifth, he has the break. That's such a big game when you're serving out ahead, when you're starting serving in the final set as he did that day. So at 30-15, he had a backhand pass up the line that he missed wide, and Djokovic was in bad shape on the other side of the court. No way could he cover it. Rafa played it too fine, got broken, eventually lost the match. And then, of course, with Roger 3-1 in the fifth in 2017, you thought he had him there. Roger had come back from a 6-month absence with his knee surgery, and then Roger never lost another game, won 5 in a row. So clearly Rafa remembered those missed opportunities and lamented them. And I think in a strange way, it was probably a good thing. I think he may be stepping outside of himself and kind of realizing that and okay, it happened then. Maybe it's going to happen now, but it's not going to happen with me giving it away. I'm not going to give him any more help.
And you could see by his reaction when he lost that game. I mean, there was sort of a grin and a smile to it, like you could tell he was thinking about it.
Yeah, and very unusual for Rafa. But I think at that stage, he was so philosophical about it, and it's in a strange way, it benefited him. It benefited him immeasurably because suddenly he breaks right back. Now again, it did show some of the vulnerability of Medvedev at 5-all. He gets to 30-15. We get another drop shot. It wasn't a terrible drop. It was a little lower than some of the other ones, but Rafa was onto that one, hit a beautiful angled backhand cross court, and eventually broke him after Medvedev saved a few break points. It was a deuce game. It was a tough game.
Yeah.
But once again, you have to wonder about Medvedev. If you've been granted this kind of a reprieve from Rafa, and now you're serving at 5-all in the fifth, you've got to at least hold on and get yourself to a final set tiebreak, which would have been such a fitting way to end the match if we could have had that, with the 10-point tiebreak. Didn't happen. And again, Rafa with a couple of those nice loop returns. Daniel had served an ace for 30-15, and then Rafa got a lot of returns back after that. But again, I don't think that Daniel's location I don't think that was his best serving the rest of that game. And once Rafa had that play on the returns, you felt like he was the sturdier guy from the backcourt.
Absolutely. And especially the last return that Nadal made on break point to grab the break. I thought that was an excellent return. It was really deep.
Down the middle. It was beautiful. It was beautiful. And then, of course, that's where Daniel has too much time to think. It makes me think of the Djokovic on set point in the first set of last year's final. He had just blocked a return deep down the line, and Daniel had a high forehand and bungled. Similar to that in the sense that the guy, he doesn't want to be thinking like that. He wants to be reacting. He's better when he's reacting to more speed. And that, but that was it. Another stunning development. I mean, if you look at those two games, how can Rafa lose serve from 30 love serving for the match? How can Daniel not hold at 5-all? But it was that kind of a match. Yes, they were both vulnerable. And so we wouldn't call this an epic. I don't put it in the epic category. And I think of all of Rafa's majors, it's the most gratifying and clearly the greatest comeback of his career, given the circumstances, the importance of the match. But I don't think he's going to put that down there as one of his great performances. It just was very gritty. Did you feel that way?
Yeah, I wouldn't call it an epic either. I felt like it was one of the most unexpected and unbelievable matches, but definitely wouldn't put it in the category of the 2012 final or some of the other Djokovic Nadal matches.
But it's interesting, Vansh. No, I'm glad you agree. It's just interesting to me, though. Let's go back to 2012 for a second. Okay, so Novak had that golden 2011 season where he didn't lose a match, all the 41 matches in a row over the course of the season before losing to Federer at the French, won the other 3 majors, which just a fantastic season. And yet Rafa lost to him. He'd lost to him in the Wimbledon and US Open finals that year. And 4 setters, but fairly decisive. And yet Rafa squeezed out the 3rd set of the Open final. I remember him saying after Australia that just winning that set felt so good.
Right.
He could have lost straight, and he won a really hard-fought third set before going down decisively in the fourth. And he had that positive attitude, and yet he still wasn't quite sure if he could do it. And in the end, the doubts really did hurt him maybe down the stretch. And Novak was coming off one of his greatest seasons, so it kind of made sense what happened. And then 2017, a little different because you had to figure he would finish off Roger from there. But you can feel the tension on those occasions. You can feel how much he wanted it and didn't necessarily expect it, but his desire and his motivation could not have been higher. And here this time, it was all such a lark. I think a part of him, he was in the final, was thrilled to be there, was going to try, and he actually enjoyed playing that match. Gets back to what we were saying earlier. The enjoyment he found in just being out there competing and giving himself a chance in the end helped pull him through, because he wasn't in the mood to be too hard on himself or to beat himself up if he happened to lose after all that had happened to him over the second half of last year.
Completely agree. Yeah. And also, he sort of confirmed that the last 2 weeks, and sort of in his philosophy, the way he sort of views the major record, because it's not so much about surpassing Djokovic and Federer, and I don't even get the impression that it was more about 21. I think it was just about purely being back on the court, being healthy again, being in a position to be able to vie for these kind of trophies and have the chance again, really, because it's
I think you're right. I understand what you're saying, and I understand what he was saying. I think he compartmentalizes, because I honestly think in the back of his mind, he tries to drive it out of there and give it as little thought as possible. He clearly wanted to move it. How could you not, after you spent your whole career? He spent his whole career trailing Roger, and he finally caught Roger at the 2020 French, and then hadn't won one since. And Novak had caught both of them. So here's a chance to move out in front again with the French coming up. So I do believe that meant a lot. It means more to him, much more to him than he's saying, but he's able to focus more on the enjoyment part that you're talking about. Make that paramount in his mind and say, okay, the result will take care of itself, and I'll worry later about the record. But I do believe he takes great pride, and you have to at their level. How could you not, when you've spent your career setting these records, breaking these records? But you're right. He put the emphasis on the joy of competing.
Yeah, that's spot on. That's a really good way of putting it. And obviously this leads to the natural question, which is, the legacy, the conversation between the big three. Really, it's been sort of the big two since 2018, 2019 now. But nonetheless, I mean, you look at Djokovic and you look at Nadal now, and they each have the double career Grand Slam. They're each 2 and 4 at their respective worst major, like in finals. And what's kind of interesting is that, like, Nadal is 21 and 8 in major finals, and Djokovic is 20 and 11. But and if you take out
Vansh, Federer as well, that's the interesting thing, that both Roger and Novak 20 and 11. Right. They played 2 more finals, but they have one less title, which is fascinating. Right. It shows you how that, I think, in fairness to Roger and Novak, they don't have, as great as Novak is on hard courts and as great as Roger is on grass, there's nothing like Rafa on clay. So sure. Rafa 13 and 0 at the French Open in finals and 8 and 8 elsewhere. So that's not a knock on him, by the way. It's just that he's never, and it's great quality, because you still can have a bad day somewhere along the line. You could lose a couple of those finals, and he didn't. He didn't. So you're right. That's an interesting part. And I think it's important, by the way. I think your record in major finals, Pete Sampras being 14 and 4, I think those stats are important because it shows your greatness as a big match player. And who knows how it turns out eventually. Maybe Novak wins his next 3 major finals that we play. We're never going to know. It's going to take time to know that. But boy, I admire Rafa, especially given that this was, what you alluded to. Now he's got at least 2 of every major. He's tied Novak in that department, and it's something Roger has not been able to do. And I didn't think it was possible anymore. I thought that Rafa had lost his chances there in 12, and then also in 14 when he lost to Stan Wawrinka when he hurt his back in the warm-up and lost that final in 4 sets, and then another final in Novak where he got obliterated in 19. So I thought once he lost that match to Novak 3 years ago in the finals, I thought that was probably his last chance to get the career set of 2. But boy, did he prove me wrong.
Yeah, he proved everyone wrong here with this win. I mean, even I remember Mark Petchey saying on on commentary, like, surely this is the decisive point, and that was a 2-3 love 40, and you can't blame him because I was thinking exactly the same.
And then Patrick McEnroe said something very similar. He said, "This is all but over," and he spoke for all of us. I mean, we all know. And let's face it, if Medvedev breaks there, then probably was going to be correct. I mean, you never know with Rafa. Maybe he breaks right back, but unlikely at that stage. So,
right.
No, I think my view of this, Vansh, looking at these guys, the best clutch competitor I've ever seen is Djokovic. The best day in, day out, everyday competitor, every tournament, every moment is Nadal.
Yeah.
I just feel like never lets his guard down, and he where he's different from Novak, he's less emotional as a competitor. Novak has days, there are times when where he's just, for whatever the reasons, he's been subpar mentally, or his emotions have spilled over and gotten the best of him. Something like the U.S. Open incident that cost him the very unlucky default there, is smacking a ball. That kind of thing doesn't happen to Nadal. So, and I think that quality is what won him this tournament. His equanimity as a competitor amazes me.
Yeah, absolutely. And this was also the most number of sets Nadal has ever lost en route to the title. I mean, do you remember what the second most was? I mean, he lost 6 here. So
yeah, no, remind me. Actually, I hadn't even thought about that.
Yeah, so it was the 2010 Wimbledon. He ended up losing 5 sets, and that was the most he'd lost up until that point, which is crazy to think about.
Yeah, it is. And that was his second title. And, obviously he finished that tournament really strong with destroyed Berdych in the wind in the final. But yeah, along the way, there were some real struggles. I do remember those. And the fact is that this one, the one I think that really, the one that amazes me the most here is Shapovalov. I didn't quite understand. Shapovalov is a mystery to me. He caught an off-form Zverev and beat him in straight sets. And Sasha had 5-3 in the second set and didn't close it out. And that was his only real chance. And Denis played a solid match. And then he comes out against Rafa. And I thought he didn't play very smart the first 2 sets and didn't put enough returns into play. And Rafa served really well and got his 1 break a set and looked like he had him. And then the problems with the stomach and the heat. And so was able to win those 3rd and 4th sets. And you saw how wobbly Rafa was in the 4th. And then we saw Denis complained because Rafa took the medical timeout, bathroom break, consumed about 6.5 minutes.
Yeah.
And, I thought that for Shapovalov to complain later about Rafa and the rules and the time, and I don't like it when young players like that don't look themselves in the mirror and say, what did I do wrong? Because the fact was he had a break point in the first game of the 5th and Rafa served an ace. And then Denis just really botched the second game very badly on his own serve with a stream of errors. Then he had 2 more break points in the 3rd game. And on one of them, he didn't put a return back that he clearly should have made. And the other, he made an unforced error off his backhand. So I just think, and then Rafa was very poised, was very mature, and just tried to keep the ball in play in that 5th. He didn't try to do too much because he could see that Denis was self-destructing, and he served really well. So all credit to Rafa. I thought that from Shapovalov's end, was a golden missed opportunity because you have a player that's clearly still not right. And Rafa admitted that he still wasn't feeling great in the 5th set. He still wasn't feeling great. He, it was hard to tell if he maybe had a little resurgence of energy, but he said he kind of shook his head when he did the interview afterwards, and you could tell he still hadn't been. He still felt very vulnerable in the 5th. So that was surprising to me. I'm also sorry we didn't get to see Zverev play Rafa. I mean, not to say that I wanted to see Zverev play Rafa on a day when Rafa might not have been up to it because of the heat stroke and the stomach, but I was hoping we would see a really classic quarterfinal between the two, and of course we never got it.
Yeah, those are good points, and definitely Shapovalov, I felt like his youth and inexperience kind of showed in that moment because, here he was complaining about the amount of time Nadal was taking in between points, and ESPN showed that graphic, and I think that was at the end of the 4th set, and he was taking 28 seconds in between points, and Nadal was taking 31.
Exactly.
So
exactly, I noticed that too. Absolutely right. And again, that's just too much moaning and groaning for my liking. And what I also didn't like about it, by the way, is Rafa's a gentleman, and he called Shapovalov up to the net because he was trying to understand what was going on with Denis there in the early stages when he was giving Carlos, the umpire, so much grief.
Yeah.
And it looked to me like Denis tried to laugh it off with Rafa. I really think if he had this beef and he felt Rafa was taking too much time, and maybe I'm wrong. I don't know exactly what was said, but I don't think didn't appear that he ever said to him, Rafa, my gripe is I honestly think you're taking too much time. That's what's upsetting me. I don't mean it personally, but I believe that the rules should be applied. And I think he's letting you he's let you go over that 25-second rule too many times. That's what I'm complaining about. But it didn't appear that he did that. And I didn't like that either. I thought, okay. Plus calling Carlos corrupt was inexcusable to me.
And then saying all of you are corrupt. Like it was just such a bad look, you know.
No, it's too bad because he's got all this exuberance. I remember he played that semi against Djokovic at Wimbledon. Djokovic went up to him in the locker room afterwards to sort of half console him and half encourage him for the future. And we all know what a great shot maker he is. But I'm worried about some of the conduct, and I didn't like all the griping here. I mean, it just comes off to me like sour grapes and alibis when, you know, you had a guy who was 35 years old on the other side of the net who's not feeling like himself, unusual ailment for Nadal, and he clearly was suffering. So it's up to you to go out and get the job done. And he didn't give Rafa much credit either. I didn't like that either. The whole thing was very unfortunate. He had an opportunity. Rafa took it away from him. But just own up to the fact that you, Denis, need to grow up and you need to become a better match player and handle those circumstances better in the future. But it was all everybody's fault. It was the umpire's fault. It was Rafa's fault, not him.
I hope he looks inward and, you know, looks at himself and, you know, analyzes and takes the time because, you know, this has happened to him before. I remember in 2020 US Open, he was playing against Carreño Busta in the quarters and he had won the fourth set, 6-love. Yeah. And, you know, he was under the impression that his opponent is sort of, you know, not well. And sort of he had him in the fifth set. And, you know, that at that point, that was his first ever, like, 5-setter in that kind of a stage.
Right,
And, you know, I felt like same thing sort of happened here in the sense he really didn't capitalize in his opportunities in the beginning of the fifth set. And that was where he had, that's where he had Nadal, and that was his opportunity. And he lost that match because of his tennis and in between his head, not because of Nadal's gamesmanship is what he was going for.
Definitely not. And you know, yes, okay. He claimed that he lost the momentum because Rafa took all that time. No, it's up to him to maintain the momentum and to take advantage of the opportunities. He reminds me a bit of Andy Murray in all the venting that he does with his entourage at courtside. And I don't have a big problem with that as long as he would just get on with it himself and be a little bit more positive and compete in a more positive way and stop complaining all the time. It's also wasted energy too. It does become energy. So I hope he's going to grow out of this. We've seen some good majors from him now between Wimbledon last year and this one here. But I was disappointed in his attitude that day.
I hope so, because I love watching him play. And, you know, the other thing you mentioned Zverev, and to me, that performance was just so lackluster and listless and I mean, disheveled. I mean, here he's now played 26 majors and he's 0-11 against top 10 in majors. Yeah. And this is becoming a real problem now. He's 4-15 against the top 20. And he's like 50% against the top 50. And this is a guy who's won everything there is in best of 3. I mean, he's won 2 year-end championships. He's on a tear since Wimbledon of last year. So to see these performances again and again, and, you know, I don't think he'll get another chance to win a major until the US Open. So he's going to have to really wait and capitalize these next couple of years because there's a lot of other young players coming up, and he just seems to just get really passive in these moments.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I understand what you're saying with all the stats and his record against the top 10, et cetera. I would only say this. He's proven, as you also alluded to, that he can beat those guys. You know, look at the year-end championships. He beats Djokovic and Medvedev back-to-back. He beat Novak in the Olympics. Right. You know, so many wins against top players elsewhere. And I don't think it's a question he doesn't have the fitness for best of 5. I mean,
it's mental.
Unlucky in a way against Team in the U.S. Open final of 2020. He should have closed him out sooner. He had 2-0, and then he served for the match in the 5th. So, and then a little unlucky against Tsitsipas at the French last year, coming from 2 sets down to take it into a 5th with an early break opportunity at the start. I think he had love 40 the start of the 5th. didn't take it. So I don't think it's a question that, I think once he starts beating the other top 10 players in majors, he could do it repeatedly. But what I don't understand is he says after the match here, well, I didn't play well today. I wasn't happy with how I played today, and I didn't play well the whole tournament. Well, again, whose fault is that? And why didn't you do something about it? And you should have had confidence to believe after everything you achieved in the second half of last year that you would have as good a chance as anybody to win this Australian Open.
Yeah, and he really likes to hype up his own chances too, because he's always talking. I mean, he said before the tournament, this is sort of like a new big three between him and Medvedev and Djokovic, and I mean, his results really back that up in the second half of 2021. So to see him say that was a bit baffling.
Well, I didn't mind him saying it as long as he does back it up. And what puzzles me is why didn't he? And okay, it's tricky. Denis is a left-hander. Denis is a scintillating shot maker, and sometimes it's unnerving when he's really on his game. But still, the game that Zverev played when he served for the second set was just absolutely abysmal. Included 2 double faults, one of them a feeble double fault, one of them where he really went for it hard at 135 down the tee. Kind of a little bit of reverting back to the Sasha of the first half of last year, and I thought he sort of solved those service woes, and I thought these mood swings were more under control, and he played to such a high standard. I'm agreeing with you up to a point about the U.S. Open. I do think, as good as he is on clay, that under certain circumstances, he's one of those guys actually that could be a threat to Rafa and Roland Garros. The question is, will he beat anybody else?
Right.
And Wimbledon, he still doesn't believe on the grass. On the other hand, with a serve like that, I have to give him I still give him a shot at Wimbledon, Roland Garros and Wimbledon, and then we come back to the Open. Maybe he surprises us, Vansh. Maybe suddenly Roland Garros, when people are going to be playing down his chances, maybe he responds to that. But it certainly was disappointing to see this happen again in Melbourne.
Right. Another player I wanted to talk about was Berrettini, because he became the first player in the 1990s to reach the quarterfinals of all 4 majors or better, and he's now made semifinals or better in 3 of them. So I really feel like he's really living up to the billing of a sort of a solid between a top 5 and top 10 player, and he beats everyone he really should be. I mean, the Alcaraz win was so impressive because especially the way Alcaraz was playing and coming back after losing the first 2 sets to finish him off the way he did in that 5th set tiebreaker and not make a single unforced error. I think he's extremely clutch. He has a big serve. He has a big forehand. Obviously, there's some big limitations with the backhand and the movement, and Rafa really exposed those weaknesses in the semifinal. But I like the fact that he's getting there, and with the right, if the draw can open up in the right way, I mean, he definitely can get back to another final again, or keep reaching semis at this stage. But he's a little bit capped against the very, very best players like the Zverev, Medvedev, Djokovic, Tsitsipas, like all the players ahead of him.
Yeah, I worry that he's going to get stuck in this sort of semifinal syndrome, maybe an occasional final. I agree with you about the wins that he had. I thought it was a very gutsy win to fend off Alcaraz in the end after the kid had come back at him so strong in the 3rd and 4th sets. And I thought he also did a really nice job of that at the end to finish off Monfils, who was such a crowd. And Monfils had been at his best this whole tournament. So those are very good wins. I was very puzzled, though, by the way that he approached the first 2 sets against Rafa. Rafa was terrific. Rafa was hardly making an unforced error those first 2 sets. However, Berrettini just wasn't coming at him, wasn't blazing at him the way he wasn't playing his kind of tennis. I mean, it's all about big serving and explosive forehands, and try to just hang in there with the backhand and keep the ball in play and wait for the opening off the forehand. But he was not exploding off his forehand until the 3rd set. And then the serve wasn't that great either. But suddenly, from the middle of the 3rd to the middle of the 4th, 5 love games in a row. At one stage, 23 points in a row in that set. And you thought maybe, this could get really interesting. And suddenly, at 3-4 in the 4th, he kind of tightened up a little bit. And Rafa once again made those kind of tantalizing, difficult returns that he's known to make, as he did against Medvedev. Some of those loop returns deep down the middle, high trajectory, daring Berrettini to come up with the good. So it was a good professional performance from Rafa to fend him off there in the fourth. But there was that stretch from midway through the third into the middle of the fourth. And he had a couple of 15-30s as well on Rafa's serve in the first and seventh game of the fourth set.
Right.
That could have been a difference where he missed openings. But I'm not optimistic. And in terms of where he goes from here, yes, I think he can stay in that range of 5 to 7 in the world for a long time. I mean, I think he's going to be certainly a regular occupant of the top 10 in the world. But I don't know about maybe just occasionally he gets to that final. He took advantage of his chances at Wimbledon, and that was nice. But I do worry about him, and I hope that he can make strides off the backhand, but it's not apparent to me that he will.
Yeah, I think he's pretty limited on that wing.
Yeah.
Okay, and then another player that I really didn't have much expectations for, especially when I saw his draw, and obviously the tough 6 months he's had. I mean, with the arm problems, elbow problems, and just coming off of surgery. I mean, didn't even play his first match at the ATP Cup, and that's Stefanos Tsitsipas. And I mean, he didn't play so well in the first week. I mean, he lost a set to Paire, he lost a set to Baez, and then he had that 5-setter with Fritz. But then he really impressed me against Sinner. And you really started to think, okay, maybe there's a chance in this Medvedev match could get interesting. And it was a very good match for 3 sets. I mean, much better than their semi last year at the Australian Open. So now I feel really optimistic. And, I definitely think he's going to have a spectacular clay season.
Yeah, I feel essentially the same way. I wish that he would resolve the problem of his father. His father's the father is tremendously devoted to Stefanos, and that part I like. I like the fact that how much they both care. I think they need to figure out a way here that Stefanos doesn't have to keep dealing with the question. It's fine to say, oh well, but there's a lot of other coaching going on. I understand that, but that argument doesn't work very well. Yeah. I think you have to just worry about your own situation, and so I hope that he can get past that, because I think his father is getting in his way by having Stefanos having to be warned for these coaching infractions. However, the rest of what you said couldn't be more true. He came from some pretty mediocre performances in all the matches you mentioned, including the Taylor Fritz match, the 5-setter. And that Sinner match was magnificent. And it was the best he had played in a long, long time. And he carried it you're right, for 3 sets. And to me, had he closed out the first set tiebreak against Medvedev, that was another tiebreak comeback from Daniel. You got to give him credit for doing it a few times in this tournament. There, Rafa in the final. But if Tsitsipas wins that first set, I think we could have had a very different outcome. I think that was a critical set. And then I thought Medvedev played really well after he kind of imploded with the umpire there too, complaining about Stefanos' father and the time and the coaching, all that stuff, and got just raging at the umpire. Then he settled down and played really well the rest of the way. And Stefanos, maybe because of all that he's gone through recently with the arm/elbow, he didn't have much left physically in the fourth, but I'm still very encouraged about what he'll do on the clay and really actually for the rest of the year period. I hope he'll become a better grass court player. I know he's great on hard courts. And Roland Garros was some of the best tennis of his career last year when he beat Medvedev in the quarters and Zverev in the semis and had Novak down 2-0. So I share your optimism about Tsitsipas in 2022.
Yeah, the only thing I would add is that I do feel like there's 2 kind of shots that are letting him down. And one is the return of serve. I really feel like against the best servers on a hard court, he just misses way too many returns, especially on the backhand side. I mean, he doesn't get enough returns in play. I mean, he won only 14 points on the return against Medvedev. And sure, he broke twice. But it wasn't much better last year either when he played Medvedev. I think Medvedev won 88% of his first serve points during the whole match. And it just seems like he's kind of caught in the middle between, he doesn't have a great block return. So he's having to take huge swings off of his backhand, and he's not really willing to give up court position in order to do that. And I just feel like it's better for him on the clay because he can hide that weakness a bit. But something there I feel like needs to be addressed. And maybe your point about about his dad and the coaching. Maybe if they brought another outside coach in, I'm thinking someone like a Mark Philippoussis, because I know he was saying on commentary that he's been helping. He's known Steph and their family for a while, and he's sort of been helping and giving him tips on the slice backhand and the backhand. And I just feel like if he just makes those 1 or 2 small improvements, I mean, that could be the next step for him to really become world number 1 or win these hardcore titles.
Yeah, I agree. Look, I mean, we've all seen this, you diagnosed it well. I mean, we've all seen the issues he has on the return of serve. I would only say regarding those back end return that to me, it's not a difficult choice. The big swings are not going to work. The block return needs to be improved. And that would be the easiest solution to what has been an enduring problem. And I can't believe that whether it's Philippoussis or somebody else, that couldn't be fixed. Yeah. And once he gets to the point where he's getting more return, it'll make a big difference because he's really quite a good server. But he needs to take some pressure off his serve, and he needs to break more often than he does. And it has been an ongoing issue for him for really over the last couple of years.
Yeah, for sure. And the rest of the game is there. He has a great forecourt game. He is showing some more variety on the backhand wing, and he's just so terrific to watch when he's in form. So.
Yeah, no, he transitions well. He's got nice technique on the volley. He really I mean, look at the difference. You alluded to Medvedev earlier. Look at the difference between Tsitsipas's approach to coming up to the net and his technique and Daniel. No comparison. He's much happier up there. And so, yeah, he's the kind of guy you want to see succeed because once he gets that return, once he can improve that return, he'll be a very complete player. That's just the one element missing.
Yeah, for sure. And I do also feel a little bit sorry for him in the past 6 months because I feel like the public perception of him has just been quite too harsh by many in the media or by some fans out there. I really feel like he caught a lot of grief for all the bathroom break stuff. And it seems to have sort of got in his head a little bit at some points at the end of last year. And I just don't think that's quite fair because I don't think he's really like a villain, like some people kind of paint him out to be.
Yeah, it's been harsh. Some of it he's brought on himself. I think some of the battles were longer than they should have been, but then he did respond to that. And, I think there's been some changes since. And you're right. I mean, it just piled up in a way. I mean, because we had the Zverev incident in Cincinnati and the complaint about his father. It seems like a bunch of things happened to him in a short span. And I also think, by the way, Vansh, that it really didn't help when Andy Murray laced into him at the Open and then wouldn't stop.
Like the tweets afterwards were just too much.
I mean, that hurt because Andy at this stage is seen as one of the elder statesmen of the game. And it's not as if Andy's behavior has been so perfect. So I really find it a little bit hypocritical that Murray would be delivering these lectures, even though he himself has so many commendable qualities, but he was way too hypercritical of Tsitsipas. And I think in a way that was a bit of sour grapes because he'd lost a frustrating match and he was annoyed with himself, and then he just really let Stefanos have it. And I thought that actually Tsitsipas was very dignified about it. He didn't fire back, and he was very low key about it. And hopefully over time he's going to win people over and be seen in a more positive light.
For sure. The next player that's really impressed me this year is Felix Auger-Aliassime. I mean, just wow. Like he's made so many like technical improvements in his game, especially during that off season. I really feel like, and now the work with Uncle Tony, it's really paying off because we know he's a great athlete. We know he has a great serve, a nice forehand, but he's really setting himself up with the forehand nicely. And he's really playing a much more measured game, in my opinion. Like he knows when to sort of step back and defend and when to sort of go after the ball. And he's following it up with nice shots at the net. I mean, the Medvedev match was great. I mean, he was 2 sets to love up, but I feel like, there wasn't much he could really do on the match point. And Medvedev just came up with a really big serve. And, he's starting to really come into his own. And hopefully that first title is coming. It's only a matter of time.
Oh, no question. Listen, let's not forget, Vansh, that even after the disappointment of Medvedev hitting that service winner at 4-5 down in the fourth, and holding on and winning the set, taking into a fifth, that Felix had 6 break points and he had to choose 2 15-40s on Daniel's serve where Daniel really had to come up with something special and did. But I just think to compare that performance to what he did against the same player at the US Open and the ATP Cup.
Yeah.
I mean, he should be very proud of that because I remember, a lot of people, I was inclined to think it was going to be a clear-cut win for Medvedev going in based on having watched those 2 matches. And I think that Felix would return so much better in this match than he did in the other 2. And that's got to be very encouraging to him. And he doesn't have to feel like he lost it. And it was Medvedev won that match, and Felix didn't toss it away. And yes, I agree with you. The idea that he hasn't won a title, it wouldn't shock me if his first title just happened to be a major.
Yeah, absolutely. It definitely could happen, and you have to think like he's definitely going to be in the latter stages of all the majors. He's so good on grass at Wimbledon, and he's going to definitely like his chances everywhere. You'd hope the French Open results would get better, but that's only a matter of time as well.
Yeah, that'll happen, but certainly on the faster courts. And listen, he is such an exhilarating player to watch because he's got really the whole package and the movement and great ground strokes of which are becoming more dependable and a very good volleyer and a terrific serve. He's got it all. And I think now it's about shot selection. It's about a match playing acumen, and he's getting there fast. And he's just such an enormously appealing young man. His demeanor out there, his ability to smile at himself, but keep competing with sort of quiet ferocity. It's impressive. He's a very impressive young man, and I think he's going to be great for the game. And the titles will be coming.
Yeah, for sure. And perhaps maybe that was one of the other factors too. But Medvedev playing this really long match. I mean, he's not really played a lot of 5-setters in his career. I was looking at his record, and he's 3-8 in 5-setters, and this was probably his most impressive 5-set win.
Daniel.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. No, let's forget it. One time what was he? 0-4, 0-5, 0-6. He's been improving. He's been improving in the 5-setters, but I also think. I'm a little puzzled when I don't know how much it was mental in the final, but obviously Rafa looked fresher physically as that match went on. Daniel talked in the press conference. He said later how he really wanted to wear him down a little, but instead he was the one that got worn down. So I'm just wondering a bit about the fitness level. Well, that's part of the problem in these 5-setters, and I don't understand it. I'm sure he trains hard, but maybe he needs to make some adjustments in his training regimen so that he's a bit fitter than he is now.
I agree. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And then I mean, any other players that really stood out to you on the men's side? I thought Maxime Cressy, he was sort of fun to watch, serve and volleying.
Revelation. I mean, obviously we saw him lose that final to Rafa in Melbourne, and that was nice. And we saw what great stuff he played last year at the US Open. He's electrifying because doesn't compromise. He keeps coming at you. He's such a contrast to everybody else out there. Played that fine match against Medvedev, and Medvedev didn't exactly do himself proud with some of the remarks and the mocking comments. And, this guy's so lucky. It wasn't lucky. To me, he's willing to risk clusters of double faults here and there so as to be sure that he gets enough on that second serve that he can keep coming in behind it and serving and volleying relentlessly. And it's well worth the trade-off of having some double faults. And I like the way he volleys, and I just feel like it's got to be unnerving. Nobody enjoys having to deal with a guy that's going to be barreling in on you all the time in today's game. They're just not used to it. And he's quick enough up there so that, I mean, we're not really dealing with a Karlovic. I think this guy is really, it's going to be fascinating to watch him over the next couple of years as he gets more experience. And he's played a decent final against Rafa, played a really good match against Medvedev. And I feel like, he's going to continue to be a factor this year.
Yeah, for sure. I would love to see him at Wimbledon, see how he does there.
Great to watch him at Wimbledon. No doubt about it, and watch him play any of the top guys. And he's not afraid of anyone. That's really apparent.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. And just another thing on Medvedev, I mean, what did you make of his comments sort of after the final where he was talking about a child with a dream and talking about not playing past the age of 30 and just, some of the things he was saying about the crowd. I did feel but part of me felt a little bit sorry for him because I don't know what it's sort of like to play with the crowd against you. I mean, we've seen Djokovic many times sort of use that as fuel and to his advantage, but I don't think that means he really relishes it or enjoys it. I think it's, you sort of have to in that position. You'd much rather have the crowd with you, but it must not have been nice also to have heard some xenophobic comments from the crowd, like saying go back to Russia and things like that. So maybe I don't know if that's what he was referring to, and some of it I guess was also heat in the moment. but I also think you reap what you sow. And I think some of his behavior during this fortnight, I mean, he really sort of brought this on himself in some ways, especially, with the rant that he had against with the umpire. I don't really approve of the way he treats umpires. I wish that's something, he definitely gets better, because I really like him as a character. I think he's got a great personality. I think I think he goes about it his own way, and in some ways he relishes the villain type role. And I think it's good for the game to have different kind of personalities, and not always be politically correct on everything. So.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with essentially everything you said. I felt like that was a very bizarre spiel that he went on to start the press conference. Basically announced that you've got something to say, and fair enough. But it was really kind of a rambling. I wouldn't say incoherent, but he was rambling, and it was too much pity. And even if he just would have clarified and said, "Listen, I want you to know something. It's not easy being out. I just like to say in my opening remarks that." There were some xenophobic comments made toward me that I really resented, and that it was very hurtful. And I don't want to make this just one big excuse, but it really did affect my morale, and it's a lousy feeling to have fans treat you in that fashion. Said something along those lines. I think would be more so, but the way that he approached it was, as you said, talking about how he might be gone by 30. He talked about how he might play a hardcore tournament around the Roland Garros or Wimbledon. And the inference being, that only in Russia do they appreciate him. I don't think that's true. I think the crowd in New York was really hoping for Djokovic to win the Grand Slam, but they were very appreciative of his play, and they gave him. I think that actually the open crowds treated him quite well the whole fortnight, and I don't think he's always been the villain out there. And I think this was partially, he was just so disappointed to lose that match from 2 sets up that he was venting, and I get it. But you're right. Where you're also right is there was a lot of very contentious, unnecessary behavior throughout the tournament, and the railing into these umpires and complaining and saying, "Listen to me, I'm talking to you, listen to me." It was out of control at times. And then what's the charming part is that then he does the post-match interview and pretty much admits that he was wrong and that he shouldn't have done it and there was a mistake, but he goes out and does it again.
Exactly.
And he certainly should have understood that this crowd, under these circumstances, Rafa being the man that he is and one of the most popular players the game has seen over these last 15 years, just try to understand that and just try to quiet them the way he did in the first 2 sets. That's the way to handle it. So I think maybe the fact that he was so disappointed in himself, he's taking it out on others. I hope that Kafelnikov, I saw, made some comment about he'll get over it in 10 days. I hope Yevgeny is right and that Daniel calms down and moves on from here and starts contending hard for the remaining majors this year. It will be tough for him, though. As you alluded to with Sasha, you seem to believe that Sasha, we may not see it from him until the Open. Well, Daniel's got that not a good record in Roland Garros, despite making the quarters last year for the first time. He had never won a match before then there. And then Wimbledon has been tricky for him too, although you'd think with his serve he could do well there. Yeah. So I hope he pulls himself together emotionally, because he really does have a lot to offer, and he's a very amusing guy and very bright and honest. He speaks so candidly in these matches, but he's got to find a way to sort of deal with this restlessness and this kind of sometimes immaturity in the way that he expresses himself, especially with the umpires, because it's a different guy that comes in and speaks so reasonably in most of the press conferences, after the final being an exception. Most of his press conferences, he's quite entertaining and
I love
very
his press conferences.
Yeah, they're great. They're great.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, you would hope so, because I do think like he definitely can win up to 3 or 4 more hardcore majors. I definitely think so.
And I think he can improve on the other courts. It wouldn't shock me if he got a Wimbledon somewhere along the line, and maybe he could improve on clay. There's no reason, but certainly every year in Australia and New York, he should be a very strong contender. And you just hope that he'll kind of rediscover the joy of playing the game, because this was a very arduous fortnight for him. he had his moments of play. You know, it was tough. Kyrgios match was hard. He faced certainly a harsh crowd there, but he dealt with that. And then, you know, the Felix match and the comeback and winning in 5, and then having to get all the angst that he showed in this Tsitsipas match with the umpire. So there was, and then of course culminating with the final. So I think maybe everything did catch up to him in the final. He'd had so many emotional moments across the fortnight, and finally at the end, he didn't seem to have much energy left.
Yeah, definitely. Pretty good summation there. Yeah, lastly, just on the men's side, the last thing I just sort of wanted to touch on, because I mean, how can you not? It's a big storyline, which is the whole Djokovic saga. I mean, obviously, I don't want to go through the whole thing, and you know, a lot of it is it unfortunately became very political, and we kind of already know the whole turn of events, since it lasted for about 10 days, like between Djokovic's Instagram post up until the very eve of the tournament. But just to sort of put a bow on the whole thing, I mean, firstly, I guess before we talk about how it was resolved at the end, do you think this will change anything for Djokovic? Do you think this will motivate him now that Nadal's gotten the 21st major? I mean, does he really now? Do you really think he sort of changes his mind? Because, you know, 3 years ago it did hurt for him, but he got the surgery and he did it. He went under the table. He got it. And, you know, now with this on the line, this is a very crucial year for Djokovic. And we already know that he's not going to be able to play all those majors left in the year without getting the vaccine. So do you think this will change his mind?
I hope so. I hope it won't be just because Rafa went ahead of him in the Grand Slam title race, but that he'll also say, look, I'm gonna be 35. You know, I've got some. I'm a young 35, but these are crucial times for me, and I've got to cash in now. This is still my prime. I'm not going to be around in the upper echelons forever, right. And I've worked so hard to get where I am. And that he'll also realize the one thing I think he doesn't realize, I think it's very genuine, is when he says it's a personal decision, not understanding that this is a tricky thing with COVID, because, you know, if you don't get the virus, you're more vulnerable to getting it. It maybe prolongs the pandemic in some ways, not him personally, but the numbers of people that don't get the vaccine. I hope he'll change his outlook on it, but whatever his outlook is, I just hope even just for pragmatic reasons, that he'll say to himself, I've got to do this. You alluded to the elbow procedure. That was an emotional ordeal for him. And he said later that he was in tears over that. He didn't want to do that. But obviously, why did he do it? Because he wanted to compete and win majors, and there was going to be no other way without doing this. Things were really in a terrible state for him in the early stages of 2018. He was losing to players that normally wouldn't touch him. And everything did turn, and he won Wimbledon and the Open that year, but wouldn't have happened without the surgery, without the procedure. So I hope he looks at this the same way, Vansh, and I hope he'll say to himself, you know what, I hate this, but I'm going to do it because I can't go through this anymore. And as much as I may believe that I don't want to put it into my body, I'm not going to be, I could potentially be out of Roland Garros, Wimbledon, and the US Open and barely able to play any tournaments outside of Dubai. And so that could be crushing, and it also could just set him back in terms of any type of comeback next year. I hope he'll do that, and I think people will be understanding and sympathetic, and because this was, as you said, there was a political component here for sure. Yeah. And one thing I think should never have happened, what I feel most strongly about, is there should have been this coordination between Tennis Australia, Victorian government, and the federal government, so that there's no way that he just gets the news, and we got the news too. Everybody knew it, and then he responded with his post. But once you're being told by Craig Tiley and Tennis Australia, you're in, we've given you an exemption, you shouldn't be stopped at the border and told, no, you're not in. They should have gotten their signal straight, and then, in which case Tiley could have said to Novak, we tried and we've contacted the government. We were prepared to give you the exemption, but it looks very bleak as far as them letting you in. You might be able to try to go to court over this, but it's going to turn into a terrible ordeal. And I don't, whatever he wanted to say, I wish something like that, because all I'm saying is, imagine if Djokovic does not go, and the announcement was simply that he had not been given the exemption, that the government was not going to change their policy on vaccines, and therefore he wasn't going to play. and that he had issued a statement along the lines, I'm very disappointed, but I haven't taken the vaccine. I'm still thinking about this, but my personal choice so far has been not to take it. I accept their ruling. There would have been some mild criticism, but it would have been nothing like what we got because of him having 10, 11 days and the back and forth with the courts and the judges, and originally him being cleared again to go out and start practicing and play. And then the minister steps up again and says no, and we go back to court again. So I'm just saying, I had a lot of sympathy for him. I just wish he would stay. My hope is that he changes his stance for his own good. It's to everybody's benefit, but particularly for him to just be able to get back out there and play again, because without it, I'm very worried that we wouldn't see him. I don't think that there's going to be any kind of a gray area when it comes to Wimbledon, Open, or Paris. I think it's going to be I think they saw what happened here, and none of the other governments are going to want to go through that kind of thing. And I think the federations are going to see it the same way, in France, Great Britain, and the US. So it's a tough choice for Novak. I don't know. I mean, I know some of my colleagues believe that he will inevitably get it. I'm not sure whether he will. I just hope that he will.
Yeah, for sure. I don't know either. But like the thing is that you mentioned the loophole. I think that was one of the problems here, is because you had Renata Vorochova. She was already there. She was playing tennis. She was playing matches, and then she was forced her clothes were stripped, and she was forced to leave the country. Cost her a lot of money, and then she was gone. And there was another official or lineswoman or someone who was also let in, and then it seemed like at the end it was just purely based on anti-vax sentiment within the nation, and that was sort of their reason in the final trial. And it didn't seem like there was anything more beyond that at that point. And then we also don't really have an explanation from Craig Tiley in all of this, which is what really because also Rafa, if you notice, after he won the match, after he hugged Medvedev at the net, the first thing he did was hug Craig Tiley. All the players in the trophy ceremonies were complimentary of Tiley, and there was no questions asked of Craig Tiley during the whole thing about the whole exemption process, how it worked. I mean, there were those guidelines of like you had to have COVID within the past 6 months. I mean, there's so much that needs to be explained. The December 10th deadline, and then why was Djokovic allowed in if he tested positive on the 16th, and then you have all the events afterwards.
And listen, you're bringing up very important points. Everybody wants to put the blame on Novak, but yes, it was up to Tiley. If he had rules, if they had rules for the tournament that were December 10th, then just stand by it. Say, Novak, I'm really sorry. You just missed the deadline. God, we would have loved to have helped you. We really would have liked to have accommodated you, but we can't. He has not answered anything. In fact, they put out a statement, Tennis Australia, patting themselves on the back and saying nothing. It had all been handled well, and they never even mentioned Novak's name. Right. I thought that was very unfair, and I was a bit surprised by Daniel and Rafa going out of their way that much for Tiley as well. Yes, he must answer. The surprising thing to me is that as we speak, the tournament's been over now for several days, and we still haven't heard anything from Craig Tiley. Where's the media in Australia? They should want to hear from him.
Yeah.
Want to hear from him because he played a central role in this entire episode. Because he's the one that gave Djokovic the green light. And what surprised me was I had people that I know, longtime friends and media colleagues, and they were critical of Djokovic from the outset. And I'm saying, wait a minute, would he really fly over there? He's been told that he got an exemption. He's not just flying over there trying to barge into the country and try to. And it was also, to me, it was not an ego. It was not an ego thing either. It was just his unconventional beliefs on the vaccine, which I wish he didn't have. But I never felt it was Novak saying, I'm Novak Djokovic. I'm number one in the world. I've won this tournament 9 times. You owe it to me to let me in your country. Give me a break because I am who I am. I'm the great Novak Djokovic. No.
Yeah. To your point, I did see that from Vasek Pospisil when he made that point very clearly in a tweet that like Djokovic wouldn't have come on the plane if he was told that, you don't have a valid exemption.
Inexplicably overlooked in so much of the coverage and the criticism of Djokovic. Nobody seemed to bring that up. And there was mild criticism of Tiley, but only mild. And the fact is, he opened the door, and he clearly wanted Novak to play. And then once it happens, they just sort of, there's nothing more said. I felt that he really did an injustice to Djokovic by not speaking up and at least saying, and he should have after the tournament, okay, if he didn't want to go on about it because the tournament was about to start, I think as soon as it was over, and somewhere in the last couple of days, we should have had a statement. And he should be coming to Djokovic's defense in the sense of saying, look, I can't explain all the things that went on and with the form or the Novak. And again, it was poor judgment of Novak, and he admitted it, to go and meet with the L'Equipe reporter. But does that alone disqualify? Does that mean you now to say, okay, we don't like the fact that he met with a reporter? And again, it gets back to your political point. So are you going to make the judgment that because he did that, he doesn't belong in this country? Plus, the other point, Vansh, is he was never an anti-vaxxer. He was just one who was believed that it was your personal decision and it was his decision, but he never went on a crusade urging people not to take the vaccine. Had he done that, there might have been other players who would have followed suit. So that never added up either. I do think he came under really excessively harsh criticism. Yes, he brought some things down on himself with some of the things that happened regarding the form and that visit with the French reporter and the kind of, but the bottom line is, he was scrutinized in very, very harshly in the end. And I hope that he will speak soon, Vanch. I saw a statement out of Serbia today. He met with their president and he thanked him and said he will tell his version soon. And I hope he does. And I hope then that will also force Craig Tiley to make us to comment once Novak has done it on his side, because then people can weigh the entire episode and have it a bit more in perspective. But it did surprise me throughout the whole thing how the entire focus was on him and not on the people, not on Tennis Australia and Victorian government, who apparently, as you know, had a couple of panels reviewing it. Yeah. It was two expert panels that looked over it supposedly blindly. And you mentioned the other, the woman player coming over to play the doubles. I mean, yes, she was yanked out of there after Novak arrived. So what was that all about? That appeared to be a reaction to the fact that they were now holding Novak in detention at the detention hotel, and they thought they were going to look bad by allowing her to continue to play. But that's a strange decision too. Why was she let in the first place? If your policy was that you weren't, why wasn't she immediately sent to initially told, oh, we're going to have to send you to this hotel and you can appeal this, but we're not letting you in. That has never been answered either.
Right, for sure. And then, I mean, just another question I really had is that, do you really feel like, because it's now, on Djokovic's part, so the first thing is you mentioned you mentioned that he's not an anti-vaxxer and he sort of just believes, it's sort of a belief that he has about himself. But isn't it, I do think it would help if he clarified that again, himself, because, especially with the protests and everything that happened in Australia, it is unfortunate, but he's kind of made out to be like this political martyr and like face for like anti-vax sentiment, when that's really not at all what he believes in. I mean, because if you remember in Belgrade, he offered vaccines to players and staff. And so it's not like he donated millions of dollars in Serbia, Spain, and all around the world, to help doctors and stuff during COVID-19 in 2020. So he's definitely not anti-vax.
No, and you're right. He absolutely should. He should clarify that and all the rest, because the only thing we really heard from him was when he made that one, in between the two court cases, when he talked about what he did with the French reporter and sort of apologized for that and explained the dates of the COVID and the events that he'd attended. Just he addressed a few specific points then, but not the entire thing. And certainly we need to hear from him about what he was told initially that led him to go over there, what they were telling him because he obviously, and I think it would also help, sorry to interrupt you, but I think it would also help if he had advisors around him that really held him accountable. Because I really feel like also, sometimes, and I understand their point, and he's scrutinized a lot, but I feel like the team around him it's more sort of like us against the world. And it's sort of like, it's become a little bit too much
sort of like victim mentality. I mean that in a good way, because I feel like he sort of has many, self-owned goals in a way. Like, he sort of shoots himself in the foot in places where I feel like, Federer and Nadal wouldn't in that instance. So.
Yes, you're right. It's the people around him. I have to say this. I think that's really more his parents. That his parents are fiercely loyal to him, and his father makes these comparisons to Jesus Christ and says some things that are a little bit wacky, I think. That's not doing a service to his son. But I do think that the people like Marian Vida and Goran Ivanisevic, they're the ones that can really help him sort through this. And because obviously, even they were, we saw Goran over there. I mean, he's clearly had the vaccine.
Yeah, he's had it.
So and Novak knows that, and maybe he didn't love taking it either. I don't know how he felt, what his feelings were, but he just was very practical, obviously. And I would think Goran is one of these guys. He speaks his mind so freely, and he has this good relationship with Djokovic where they can really get in each other's faces, so to speak. And I would hope that Goran would be the one to say, look, we all know what's happened, Novak. This was so sad. That might have been your 21st major and not Rafa's. And we know what happened, but we've got to look forward here to the rest of the year. And I'm just asking you to please reconsider on this and just get the vaccine for your sake. Just do it for your sake so that you can then just clear your head and get back to playing tennis, because you were on a roll last year. And even though you lost in New York, you had one of the great years of the Open era. I mean, you won the first three, you got to the final, the fourth. It was one of your greatest seasons ever. And you got yourself up to 20 and you want to keep going. And here you are, having missed the first major of the year. We've got to get you back out there. I could hear Goran saying that to him. And so that's my hope, that somebody, Goran and Vida as well, and they convince him for logical reasons, why he has to do this. And then he does it. And that would be, I think that would be a relief to all of us. But I do think you're going to get some clarity from him. I do think in time here, when he's ready to address this in a kind of a comprehensive way, as you say, it gets back to when we started this discussion. Now, he doesn't have to go through the entire blow by blow account, but certainly the business of getting into the country and having been so excited. And the other thing I thought was, again, a little unfair to him is he put that social media post out about going over there, and I'm heading over, and everybody took that as sort of as if he was trying to defiantly.
Yeah.
That fine. I didn't see that. I saw it as somebody who was like excited that he'd gotten the exemption and relieved. And it was like, well, I'm going over to play the Australian Open. Happy New Year to everybody. And let's go 2022. It looked to me like a very positive kind of statement. Caught a lot of flack for that. But I do think in the weeks
just
ahead.
On that point, I do wonder, though, what would have happened in an alternate timeline had he not used the word exemption permission. Just wondering how that might have played out, because in people's heads, I mean, maybe that played a role at the very end in terms of.
Could be, but again, I didn't have a problem with exemption permission, because he was saying they gave me I have permission now. They gave me an exemption. Who's to say? We'll never know, but that was definitely taken in the wrong light by a lot of people. No. And listen, he has to move on, and it's a crucial phase. And think about it this way, Vansh, just in terms of the tennis, he last played in Davis Cup.
Yeah.
Time is moving on, and he needs to. Granted, he's going to play Dubai later in the month, but he needs a lot more than Dubai, and otherwise it's going to be impossible to compete on the level that he would like. And so again, it gets back to Ivanisevic, Vida, a few people like that, non-family members, because I think they're so fiercely loyal, when it comes to his brother or his parents. And I understand where they're coming from. They're very proud of him, and they should be. But he needs someone that will, to borrow the old phrase, will tell it like it is. And I think that's where Vida and Ivanisevic can be so valuable. They can play such a crucial role in helping him to reach that decision and make the right decision, which would be, of course, to take the vaccine.
For sure. And yeah, Steve, you've been so generous with your time. I did, however, want to just really quickly in 5 minutes, if we can go through Ashleigh Barty, because her triumph was absolutely unreal. losing just 30 games en route to the title. I feel like it was the most impressive by far of her three major runs, and it was just really nice to see like this popular champion finally win at home and doing it the way she's done. I mean, with her slice and her forehand and her serve is one of the best in women's tennis I've seen in a long, long time, and it was just spectacular to watch her beat four power players in a row like that, and especially because Collins really gave her problems in that second set, and she definitely, rather than letting that second set go and focusing on the third set, she really stepped up in the crunch, and she handled the occasion very well. So
that to me was the central point. She had waltzed through the tournament all the way through the first set of the final against Collins. So we thought maybe she wins this tournament without dropping a set, and would start comparing her to Steffi Graf and fewest games lost. And suddenly Collins goes on that surge to go up 5-1. And I would have, if I'm in her shoes, I'm thinking I can't win this set. Not the way Danielle is playing, but I thought she did a terrific job to get that. She gets that first break back and then just started playing every point. And then the second time Collins served her, she had 30 love, and Ash still broke her. And I thought, you know what? That was very smart on her part, and very alert to saying, so no, I'm not giving up on this set. She could have just started thinking, I'm going to start serving the third and forget this set. Let's move on. And she didn't. And suddenly from 1-5 down, it was 5-all. And the next thing you know, they were in a tie break, and she really outplayed Danielle in the tie breaks. I thought it was very impressive. As you said, that serve is terrific. It's about, the precision of that serve is remarkable. And that's the key to it all. Deceptive. And she really can find the corners with it and move it around, and you don't know where she's going. And it's not such a big serve as like a Naomi Osaka, but it's really deadly accurate. And then I just feel the way she moves around and hits those forehand returns from the deuce court off second serves is down the line is just a great shot. And the mixture on the backhand, the combination of the slice and the drive. No, she's in a position now, Vansh, to really start putting a lot of majors into her victory column, because now she's won 3 of the 4. I think inevitably she'll get the U.S. Open. Apparently not happy about the balls there. I've heard a lot of talk about that. I think she'll get past that. And she just didn't play a good match against Shelby Rogers last year. So be it. She'll get that one, and she should start getting duplicates everywhere else. So I see her with these next 3-4 years could be spectacular for her if she maintains the same motivation. And she could really establish herself as the preeminent player in women's tennis over the span. My hope is that we're going to get a big rivalry with her and Osaka. Osaka lost to Anna Samova after having 2 match points, but no disgrace. She played a pretty decent match. And I feel like her reaction, the most positive thing about it was how Naomi reacted afterwards. There were no tears, and she was pretty happy with how she played, and very, she took it not in stride, but she took it well. So I feel like she's on her way back emotionally, and this is going to be a much better year for her than last year was post Australia. And so I would love to see those two start playing some big. We could have had a round of 16 match with them there. It didn't happen, but I do believe that the potential is there for them to meet in 1 or 2 finals. But if the draw falls the right way, and maybe we could see a major final or 2 between these two before the year is out.
Yeah, I would absolutely love that, because they haven't played each other since 2019 in Beijing, and so it's
too long.
It's gone way too long. And of course now Osaka is going to be 85 in the world, so it'll be interesting to see how the draws kind of shape out. But no, I completely agree. I think that rivalry will be absolutely terrific. Well, Naomi is on her way.
Yeah, I also think, Vansh, that the ranking dipping like that will encourage Naomi to play more.
Yeah,
and it won't be that hard for a couple of tricky draws along the way, but she could get back in the top 20 pretty quickly.
Yeah, for sure. All right, Steve, this has been amazing. It was quite a hectic 1 month of tennis, but nonetheless, I think there's a lot of terrific storylines and a lot of great things ahead in 2022 in pro tennis. And I think it just goes to show that even without as great and awesome as that Novak Djokovic is, and he wasn't in the tournament, I think this tournament really delivered in the standard and quality of matches, and we had so much to talk about. So
yeah, we did. No, it was terrific. It was great fun to review it, and I look forward, Vansh, to maybe having another one of these sessions post Roland Garros.
For sure. I look forward to it as well. Let's keep in touch. Thank you so much, Steve.
Thank you, Vansh. I enjoyed it.